Thanks to his death grip on the Republican Party, Donald Trump has an endless stable of lackeys shamelessly willing to spread his MAGA propaganda, including members of the Republican leadership in Congress. Speaking to Kristen Welker yesterday on NBC's Meet the Press, House Republican Conference Chair Elise Stefanik did just that, flat out refusing to commit to certifying this year's election results.
What about 2024?
We will see if this is a legal and valid election. What we're seeing so far is that Democrats are so desperate, they're trying to remove President Trump from the ballot.
But just to be very clear, I don't hear you committed to certifying the election results. Will you only commit to certify the results if former President Trump wins? Does that mean if former President Trump wins?
No, it means if they are constitutional. What we saw in 2020 was unconstitutional circumventing of the Constitution.
Like a little parrot, she parroted Trump in rewriting history by repeating his dangerous claim that violent January 6th prisoners are hostages.
I have concerns about the treatment of January 6 hostages. I have concerns. We have a role in Congress of oversight over our treatments of prisoners. And I believe that we're seeing the weaponization of the federal government against not just President Trump, but we're seeing it against conservatives.
Now, it should be obvious, but a person who is convicted of a crime and incarcerated for such crime is not a hostage. Stefanik also had zero problem with Trump echoing Hitler's rhetoric by saying migrants are poisoning the blood of our country, claiming that the border crisis is what's poisoning the country's blood through fentanyl.
Our border crisis is poisoning Americans through fentanyl. It is poisoning people, including in my district, who are dying from overdoses of fentanyl. And you know why? Because of Joe Biden's wide-open border, that executive actions he took on day one. So, yes, I stand by President Trump. And President Trump also has he has the strongest record when it comes to supporting the Jewish people and supporting the state of Israel.
Joining me now is Jason Johnson, professor of politics and journalism at Morgan State University and MSNBC political contributor, and Tara Setmeyer, senior advisor to the Lincoln Project, who once served as a Republican communications director on Capitol Hill before leaving the party. And it is that former job which is going to land you the unfortunate fate of having to deal with Elise Stefanik's nonsense. Tara, why is Elise Stefanik?
You know, you just look at someone like her and you shake your head, because she is the quintessential example of someone who is willing to sell every last ounce of their soul for political power and relevance. She is now becoming the Kellyanne Conway of this election cycle for Donald Trump. She will say and do anything in order to maintain that proximity to power, because she's never been more relevant in her entire life than she is now, as she is preening and begging to be Donald Trump's vice president. That's the bottom line here. The fact that she would go out and say things that are so blatantly false, and the level of propaganda, I called her Baghdad Bob level, Baghdad Bob and lipstick level propaganda. What she repeated on Meet the Press yesterday is so beyond the pale that it's disgusting. And if I were, and everyone knows that I am the granddaughter of a police officer, the wife of a federal law enforcement officer, anyone that respects police and any of the police unions and the folks who represented those officers who defended the Capitol that day, they should be protesting her office. She is a disgrace. Calling the January 6th domestic terrorists, because that's what they were, calling them hostages? Really? The Republican Party's okay with that? The Republican Party now is okay with leadership. You know, we already know how they feel about Trump, but they're okay with leadership going out there and parroting Hitler rhetoric the way Trump is. Now leadership is okay with saying, no, absolutely, I agree with his words. Yeah. I mean, what are we doing here? And I don't think we should normalize this. I was hoping that Kristen Welker would push back a little bit more on Elise Stefanik on that. A lot of folks in the media are starting to do this now, but we've got to keep doing it, because if you don't, it normalizes what she's saying. What she said was absolute trash. And we cannot allow the American people to think that that rhetoric is normalized. It's not. It's offensive. And she is one of the more despicable members of Congress.
And she is performing, obviously, Jason. But let me play you a little clip of who she's performing for. Because as far as I think Republicans are concerned, no matter what district they live in, blue district, red district, Biden won it, Trump won it, doesn't matter. These are the people they are performing for. Roll them. This is Vaughn Hilliard interviewing some voters in Sioux Center, Iowa. Go.
Even when they started talking about pulling him off the ballots, first thing I started thinking of, I voted in '84, I think it was, for Bozo the Clown. I'll write Donald Trump in, too.
Does the potential of a criminal conviction at one of the trials this year, does that give you pause?
No, not really.
How have the indictments against him impacted your involvement and your fervor for Donald Trump?
Oh, it impacted even further. I believe him even more, because they really don't want him to come in.
Jason, your thoughts on Trump, Bozo, or anything in the middle?
First off, Joy, it's hilarious to me that the first thing he thinks of before Trump is Bozo the Clown. So that says something even about the people who support Donald Trump, that they first think of a clown. None of this is surprising. Look, I've said for a long time, the Republican Party ceased to exist when they no longer had a platform, just a loyalty pledge to Trump. It is a personality cult and a dime store front for a terrorist organization. That's not surprising. What I do think is disturbing, and this is really, really key and important, it was Marjorie Taylor Greene, then it was Lauren Boebert, now it's Elise Stefanik. This sort of cavalcade of unseasoned, rhythmless Dora Milaje that the Republicans bring out every couple of years to try and defend Donald Trump. These are people who, look, if you're just a silly commentator, okay, fine, right? You can sit there and lie. But these people control policy. They're dangerous. I think it's important that we always put them in the context. It's not Congresswoman Elise Stefanik. It's terrorist supporter Elise Stefanik. It's not Lauren Boebert, congressperson who is fleeing her particular seat in Colorado. It's Lauren Boebert, who is also a terrorist supporter. That's how we have to talk about these people at all times. Nobody in Iowa who Vaughn talked to is going to care about this. That's not the issue. What's important is to galvanize the people who are like, hey, I don't think we should have terrorists in office. Those are the people who we need to galvanize, because the folks in Iowa already lost.
Let me. But while I have you, I cannot have a college professor on and not ask you about the very, very angry Bill Ackman. Bill Ackman, who led the drive to eliminate Claudine Gay as president of Harvard, accusing her of plagiarism. Turns out his wife, Neri Oxman, who is a celebrity academic, not only plagiarized, but I would say, having taught a few classes myself, my friend Jason, she plagiarized Wikipedia. Your thoughts on whether somebody he's very angry now. Now he says he wants revenge on Business Insider for exposing her. He wants all of MIT defenestrated and everyone to be fired. He wants all the Harvard board fired. He wants everybody fired. He wants a lot of people fired. Your thoughts on his wife plagiarizing Wikipedia?
Yeah, so a couple of things, Joy. Number one, Ackerman is in the find out stage, right? You can't talk all this cash money nonsense on Twitter all day. Don't you have a hedge fund to run? But you can't do that all day and expect that you're not going to end up taking shots or taking strays. That's the first thing. The second thing to take into consideration, and this galls me. This galls me because, again, it was always a bad faith attack on Claudine Gay. But when you look at the fact that his wife plagiarized from Wikipedia, there are high school students who know that you can't use Wikipedia and you can't cite Wikipedia by accident. You have to look that up. So this is somebody who, by all standards, clearly shouldn't have been allowed to go forward with their PhD if any of that had been caught. But I think the more important thing to take into consideration is, look, these robber baron rich people who think that they should be able to dominate culture and politics and education, everything else like that, just by dint of their wealth, don't seem to realize that they are still subject to some of the requirements that we have for decency, integrity, and that applies to them and their entire families. If he doesn't like it, he could have stayed off of Twitter.
Yeah, he was mad about diversity and inclusion. Apparently, he says that a lack of diversity means we have to get back to letting folks who plagiarize Wikipedia run things and be in charge and be the prominent academics because they're better because of, I can't think of what reason, but I'll think of it during the break. Jason and Tara are sticking around, and still ahead, President Biden calls out the right-wing war on black history at the South Carolina church where a white supremacist killed 9 people in 2015. We'll be right back.